Yeah. So, all right. We'll take
Okay.
we'll take a brief silence break, and then I'll jump us in.
Mm, Are we golden?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Stark After Dark. I'm your host, Jordan Clark, and this is the comics podcast all about romance and relationships. And I'm joined today by Giuliano. I want to get the whole name right. So let's give it to me one more time.
Giuliano
Yes,
Figueroa.
Giuliano Figueroa, who is a comic creator himself. And we're going to talk today about his comic series, which he can tell us about in a little bit. But also, we're going to talk about Preacher, which is
Yay.
a very interesting series in terms of romance and relationships,
Mm,
because there's a lot to unpack and there's a lot going on. Um, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But the way that I like to start every show is I like to have our guests tell us two things, and that is what is their favorite comic book relationship. So that could be anything, whether it's superhero comics or otherwise, and then also their least favorite comic book relationship. So do you have a favorite?
oh, no, yeah, definitely. I will have to say that by a very slight margin, like this is first place and a half. It would have to be on the top, Bruce and Selena, Batman
Okay.
and Catwoman.
All right.
I just love what different writers through the ages have done with that relationship. More recently, Tom King has done a great, like, 50 issue arc on it.
Yeah.
And that it's a little controversial, but I don't know. I trust this guy. He said it's gonna be 100 issues. It's kind of weird, but I do love the angle that it's actually part of Bane's master plan because this is the Bane we need. The Bane that
Right.
throws out the gauntlet, manipulates everything to his favor, and breaks Batman.
And
It's very,
we've
yeah, yeah,
like you said, we're a little over halfway through. There's still a lot more to the story, and I feel like there's like in the annual, like Bruce and Selena are together. You know what I mean? Like it
yeah.
shows them years into the future, having settled down and started this relationship. So I don't have any qualms about what's going to happen. Like I feel like uh I really like Tom King, and so I'm willing to go for the ride. I feel like I haven't been let down so far. So, Bruce and Selena, favorite relationship? Do you have a least favorite comics relationship, or a couple that you're not really on board for?
Yeah, we have to say that the most obvious choice is Joker and Harley Quinn
Mm-hmm.
because Harley Quinn has always been like a character with such high potential, very interesting. I I guess I understand people that admire the dynamic between this Joker that is a psychopath and it's grooming Harley Quinn into like being like him and this sort of madness that is also fueled by her genius, turning her into something else entirely.
Right.
But it's just a horrible relationship. He's
Yeah.
he's an abuser, and I don't know if the writers do this on purpose, but he doesn't. They just play it off, like we're gonna talk about this soon about how relationships in Preacher just play it off as light jokes, but it's very toxic.
Right.
So Joker and Harley, I think, is like the foster child for bad relationships, and I don't like when this sort of apologist stance people take on.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
the,
weird because again, like Harley Quinn is introduced in Batman the Animated Series. Um, and as a kid watching it, like again, very much so, it's played off as like, oh, like Joker threw out a window, or like Joker, like did this, that, and the third, and it's kind of like supposed to be funny that he's like, pushing her around and like doing all this stuff. But then now, as you look back on it, you're like, that was never good. Like, I don't know, that was
No, it's
there was never a part of that where I was like, oh yeah, like that's great. Like, he's beating her up or whatever. I mean, even she's supposed to be a supervillain. She's got this huge hammer and she's running around, and you're supposed to be like, yeah, like she's tough and like this isn't hurting her in any way. But I think eventually they came to a point where they're like, yeah, like Harley Quinn's got to get out of the situation, and like there's been several instances, even in the animated series, where she's like done with Joker. Um, which was great. Like I enjoyed those, but yeah, it was kind of like it is weird that not only was she like introduced on a children's show and like domestic violence was used as like a punchline,
yeah. Like, how is that the punchline?
but
Like I
uh,
remember that there are many episodes when Joker is just straightforwardly neglecting her. Like
yeah,
she's there for him. She's trying her best, and he's just obsessed with Batman. Like
right,
when I don't, I don't like any take they've done on it. I love her relationship with Poison Ivy.
hmm
The way they handle that is just beautiful. Like Poison Ivy, again, going back to Tom King, that arc where she basically became goddess of everything
right,
and had control of everyone. I love the fact that Batman went and looked for Harley Quinn because she's the one that understands being like overwhelmed by the negative parts
right,
of herself and how to control that and channel them in a more healthy way. And that's as beautiful as a relationship can get. So why the hell they had
yeah.
to deal with Joker and Harley as a couple? It's like the because okay, what I love so much about the Batman and Catwoman relationship is that they're very different and
hmm
they challenge each other, but it's in a positive manner because Bruce is kind of a stickler. He's kind of very lame on some things about the law. And like, no, Bruce, you are aware the system doesn't work.
right,
So why should you condemn this woman that you obviously love?
right,
And the fact that he accepts her just tells me that he's willing to grow, and she grows as well, and
right,
that's very healthy, and that's what we need in these romantic relationships because people that with these comic books, they're seeing an example, and if it's on paper on ink, then it's okay for us to do that. That's how maybe a child's mind works, and like it gets fed to your subconscious
right.
what is healthy, what you should do. And I don't know, let's start with comics. It's a good start.
Well, and I definitely think we need more positive, healthy relationships in comics. But we're about to talk about some unhealthy relationships in comics,
To say the least.
yeah, in Preacher. And Giuliano was right in that I'm going to give everybody here a content warning about this episode because there's a lot of things that happen in Preacher in regards to just domestic violence and sexual assault and all kinds of other things that if those things make you uncomfortable, this is definitely not the episode for you. There's plenty of other episodes that I encourage you to listen to, but this one is going to be we're going to be delving into some stuff because obviously I will say just off top that um I read Preacher for the first time maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and even then I kind of found large chunks of it to be uncomfortable and problematic. And then now rereading it for this episode, even more so, just in terms of, uh,
It wasn't easy.
no,
It was
I want
like
to Yeah, I want to. So, I mean, just to start, what I want to do, just in general, is I want to get your opinions, um, like when you first read the series, how you received it, and then kind of going back and rereading some issues for this episode, like how you're looking at it now.
Well, yeah. For me, it was 8 years ago as well. Maybe a few years more. I am sorry to say that back then I wasn't as offended. I just thought it was like, okay, this is edgy humor. We can get into it. This is what adults read, and they're okay with it.
Right.
And some parts, I wouldn't find myself laughing that often, but I was at least blown away because,
Hmm.
as you have mentioned, there are things that are just like, what did I just see here? And that's both the good and the bad.
Hmm.
Like the good things blow your way, the bad things blow your way. Reading it now, I cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry for Preacher fans out there because I know that people still read this and love it, but I I don't know. I don't know how you do it. Teach me,
Yeah.
please.
It's hard because I think there's a lot in Preacher that um if you like comics, like you'll enjoy it. Like I think Garth Ennis is somebody who is able to, through dialogue, able to kind of like really, draw you in and create these characters that are very, dynamic, and just a lot of the ideas that he throws around are intriguing, and like the storylines are intriguing, but then there's just elements that are provocative and edgy for no other reason than to be provocative and edgy, and like
Yeah,
they kind
that's
of,
it.
yeah, they to me, especially today, they fall short. They haven't aged well, just because I mean we were talking about before we came on air, just like her star getting, you know basically raped by that sexual investigator guy in an
It's,
alleyway.
a spoiler warning.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden now, like, that's what he's into. Like he can't have regular sex anymore. Like he needs to have weird whatever's going on with him. And there's a lot of times where um you know domestic violence is used as a punchline, rape
No,
and
no,
sexual
and
assault is
that,
the punchline.
no, that like I said before we started this, that hair star thing for me sticks out like the sorest thumb of it all. It made me very uncomfortable because there are too many survivors out there that
Right.
cannot, this cannot be portrayed this way. There cannot be even like 0.01% of a chance that someone reads this and thinks, "Oh, this is how it works."
Right. And again, and it's like there's been a lot of conversations recently, just about um intent versus consequence of action. And I think a lot of the times it doesn't really matter what somebody's intent was. And we were talking earlier before too, that Garth Ennis is definitely a smart person. Like Garth Ennis is somebody who, he's very aware of what he's doing. Like this isn't somebody who's just like, oh, like, oops, I didn't know that this was something that was
No, no,
going to make
he
people
was,
upset.
yeah, he was very aware. This is what he wanted to do. Like he wanted a reaction. He
Hmm.
wanted a reaction. He wanted an outlet for these messed up ideas that,
Yeah.
and it's it hurts because there are within the pages like good discussions. Like there are great ideas.
Hmm.
Like I love. This is the last time I'm gonna use that word in relation to Garth Ennis. I love how he handles the faith as a concept,
Hmm.
how he manages uh, the idea of God and Genesis and the angels. It there's a certain beauty to it.
Hmm.
Like it's again there's enough edge there to throw you back, but
Yeah.
it's not really that offensive in moments.
Yeah.
How he handles the religious stuff, because there's one of the first arcs, the one with Angelville,
Yeah.
where I found it very very interesting, the fact that God made Jesse and Tulip go through all of this, getting beaten up, getting tortured, getting killed, just to revive her, just to give him his
Right.
power back, just to tell him, "Hey, we're bros, right?" Like, like that. I really liked how he handled that portion of the story, and like God throughout the whole comic is it's very it's one of the funniest parts that
Hmm.
doesn't really that is I wouldn't say it's harmless, but it's not. It doesn't go to the other extreme where I cannot read it. Like this is what keeps me in here trying to give it a chance, because I can see that it comes from a person that understands how people are affected by these concepts and faith in general.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing about it is, well, all right. So to finish my original thought, it's if like the intention that somebody has about something that they're saying or they're writing or they're creating, like it doesn't matter if you were like, hey, like even though that was offensive, like what I meant, right? Like what I actually meant in terms of like I didn't, I don't really believe X, Y, and Z or think X, Y, and Z. Um, because like the effect and like the harm that it causes is still real. Like if you hit my car, it doesn't matter if you meant to do it or not. Like you still damaged my car. Like I still have to
Mhm.
like you know get
It's
my running through my insurance and like do all this stuff. So you can be like, oh, like I didn't mean to hit you, but it's like, but you still did it. So now there's
yeah,
still
it's
like
out there.
consequences.
Yeah, it's
Um,
out there. It's in print. Anyone can get a copy. Anyone can read this, and there's no way of it going away. And
right.
it's not like he's subtle about it. It's not like, oh, this material could be like misrepresented, misinterpreted. Someone might take this the wrong way. No, no, the wrong way is out there. It's very obvious. It's very like in your face.
Right. And I think that's the thing too, is that, you can tell as the series went further and further that Ennis and Dylan were trying to, maybe insert a little bit more nuance in there. But by that time it had already gone so far and done so much that it was kind of like they couldn't go back, and like the expectation was like you need to do something extreme and over the top basically every issue. Like if you don't have it in there, then it's not Preacher. And it's kind of like, well, they had how many issues? Like almost like let's see,
66.
66 issues. So like
66 issues plus the one shots.
66 issues of that. You know what I mean, like at a certain point, I mean, it's obvious not only, that they both, probably grew as people just over the course of, working on this comic, but just the fact that no matter how much you get into it, like Garth Ennis is definitely, if you're going to relate him to somebody, I mean he's just about like the Quentin Tarantino of comics. And
Yeah,
like Quentin Tarantino, like even with his movies, like kind of backed off a lot of the stuff that he was doing earlier on just because like it wasn't and you can't just keep doing that forever. And so doing 66 issues plus a couple of one shots, like yeah, obviously by the end
yeah,
of it, it's you can't sustain that level of just outrage and provocation. But I think by the time that you get to the end, if you can get to the end, it's just like, man, like that was a ride. And I mean, it's hard to say whether or not it was worth it. Like, I think that, you
I
know,
don't.
yeah, I mean, like for me, I feel like it's a weird like 50-50 toss. Like I think, the parts of it that are good that I enjoy are really, really, really good.
Hmm.
But then the parts of it that I'm just like, man, like why did you have to do this again? Like why did you have to bring this up again? It just kind of like you have to put it down. Like you just can't. It's not one of those things that like, oh, like there's 9 trades. Like I can sit down and read 9 trades in a row. It's like I can read one and then like take a break and then come back and kind of go through it. But we could talk about a lot of the craziness
Yeah,
that is
it's
outside of the relationships. Um,
but
but
I don't know. It's like it's like you're alluding to the the problem here is that maybe there was a great story in here somewhere, but because it turned into this gimmick of out edging himself every turn, like, oh, I gotta get edgier, I gotta get
yeah,
even more. It's just absurd. There's gonna be a point where you cannot go get better while maintaining this level of violence and like shock value,
yeah,
like, and by the end of it, it is very absurd. I do believe that for the final few issues, he kind of tones it down and turns it into a more personal story. I really can't remember the details about what was happening around them, but I remember that Jesse was fighting Cassidy.
hmm
Then they all ride into the sunset, whatever.
yeah. It was, it, yeah. Well, let's talk. Let's frame these relationships because before we came on, we kind of decided that there's three main romantic relationships
Yeah,
throughout the series that kind of mirror each other or kind of layer the story in different ways, and those are the relationship between the angel and the demon that created Genesis, the relationship between Jesse's parents, and then the kind of 3-person relationship that is Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy. Um,
yeah. That Cassidy Tulip portion of the relationship is amazing.
well, it's again,
Wow.
there's a lot there's definitely a lot to unpack, and I think starting with the demon and the angel
Hmm.
that create Genesis. Um, again, it's a very um, intriguing concept. Obviously, even
Shall,
from
shall we should we explain it to people that haven't read Preacher
yeah, go
or
ahead.
seen it? Like, well, it's the classic angel falls in love with a demon story. You know, every every other story is about this. They shouldn't be together. They cannot resist it. It's some like otherworldly urge. Like
Hmm.
they meet and this has to happen. It's pretty deterministic, which is kind of cool. And the spawn they have because at the same time this is something that could not happen. It's not that it shouldn't have happened. It's
Yeah.
like it's just not possible, but it happened.
Hmm.
So the spawn, it's something that it's even more powerful potentially than God.
Right. And
And yeah,
it,
go on.
it's weird. I mean, again, like so, there's a lot of interesting subtext, behind that, and the idea of not even just forbidden love, but again, opposites attracting, and this kind of love that is stronger than even just like the laws of reality, I guess, like
Hmm.
what is
Yeah.
what could be, what should be, all that stuff. But then, again, for me, it kind of took a turn where I was like, well, why did that have to happen? Where, like, in the retelling of the story from the angel's perspective, they meet, conceive this child, and then like he doesn't see the demon for a long time, and then like finally sees her when she's about to give birth, and then
And
his plan is like, I'll just choke her to death or something.
I'm just gonna kill her. If I kill her, well, yes. I, he was like explaining to Jesse, and he was like, "Yeah, I had a plan. It was a very good plan.
Yeah, just
It
choke
didn't
her to
work
death.
out, but but he was ready to kill her because once he found out she was pregnant, he was like, "No, this is not possible.
Right.
This will break the pillars of reality." And yeah, it still happened. Genesis got locked up by the angels.
Hmm.
There's the interesting fact that he didn't have a willpower of his own.
Right.
So he had all the ideas, all the memories, which again, it's pretty cool. It's like, this is a pretty intense idea.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm guessing that because the mirroring of these three relationships, I'm guessing I'm guessing it's not a coincidence that Genesis sought out Jesse for
Hmm.
his vessel. Like I think
Right.
that's what's very on purpose.
and and that leads us to the relationship between Jesse's parents, which is another kind of almost forbidden love kind of situation where Jesse's mom is part of the Langell family, who are pretty terrible people. They're not
Yeah, that
good
I
people.
mean the
Uh,
bar the bar is very high
yeah,
thanks to them. Like wow, I couldn't believe the coughing
yeah,
thing. Like I'm just gonna lock up this kid in a coffin, throw him to the swamp, and
yeah,
it's gonna be alive. It's not gonna be
yeah.
okay, but it's gonna be alive.
And he's gonna come out loving me more than ever.
That's it.
um,
Wow.
but yeah, so Jesse's mom is part of the Langell family, who are, as it's revealed later, just kind of, they're part of a long line of very
The
religions.
Grail.
Yeah, they're
They're
somewhat,
part of the.
they're kind of part
Sorry.
of the Grail. Yeah, like they're just a really religious family. They're part of this bloodline that is tied to the Grail, which is this um like extremist religious faction that has been continuing
No,
the
no.
Christ bloodline. So there's a lot of inbreeding in Preacher, a lot of like incest going on, which is very strange. I mean, it happens so often that it's just kind of like, all right. like
It's
I,
like the norm.
yeah,
Like even the fact that the most sacred bloodline in history, it's not like safe from it.
yeah,
And everyone's like the more aware people in the Grail are like, you've been in breeding for
right,
for a thousand, more than 1,000 years.
right.
That is not the Messiah. That is, I don't know what that is,
Well, and
but
it's yeah, I mean, it is, you could say, somewhat of a commentary on, the pure bloodlines, like the Aryan bloodlines, like keeping, things pure. And this is what that results in is this kind of weird offspring. But um Jesse's mom is from this very strange, very fanatical religious family. And Jesse's dad is, a soldier in Vietnam who comes home, meets Jesse's mom who's run away from home. They get together
yeah, but
and
they met up in a very hostile way.
mhm,
Like she was with some people that were like protesting the war.
yeah,
Yeah, like then it was very weird. I don't know what they were trying to do with that because there's like a very awkward cut from that panel of uh, John, who is Jesse's father, crying, then she looks like horrified. Then they're sitting in a bench, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wait. For a moment, I was like, did they know each other before that? Or it was because I don't know. It was weird for me.
Yeah. And I mean, again, the whole thing is just kind of like these two people who, I mean, it's not like they in particular shouldn't be together, but they're both kind of in their own way. She's run away from home, and feeling like, um, she's trying to escape her past and start a new life, and he's coming home from, a very traumatic war, a very traumatic situation, and trying to start his own new life. So they find each other as kind of this fresh start, and they start this family. They have Jesse. And then Jesse's mom's family, the Langels, catch up with her, and things go south from there. And
Yeah.
they're forced to come back to Angelville and to be part of this very strange family with his grandma. Um, but eventually Jesse's dad is killed, and Jesse's mom is also killed, and then Jesse is kind of left to his grandmother and her weird kind of like people who work for her. And again, it's interesting because this is kind of the framework for Jesse's relationships, right? Like he's looking at his mom and his dad, and this is kind of how he's basing what relationship should be off of. Because I mean, I don't think he's ever, outside of them before they got taken back to the farm, like I don't think he's ever experienced any healthy, stable relationship in his life. I think everything's just always been terrible.
Yeah. Right. Even before he got the word of God and started this quest, his relationship with God was very like messed up because
Right.
he basically got into it because he couldn't see a way out. Like this very meticulous torturing and brainwashing of him. Like he didn't have an option there. So that's basically the only reason he became a preacher.
Right.
Because they didn't give him a choice at all. Um, uh, one of the few things that all relationships have in common is this idea of breaking the rules by falling in love and
Hmm.
then getting killed. Like the three relationships suffered this. Like
Yeah.
it's very, I guess, poetic. I mean, if
Yeah.
that
I
was
mean,
the intent.
yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah. Again, like we were saying, I think each of these three relationships is designed to be layered on top of one another, and kind of read in tandem with one another. But that his parents' relationship, and then obviously him basically watching both of his parents die, doesn't necessarily create a very stable, healthy individual in Jesse. And he's somebody who then goes on to meet Tulip, after he runs away from his family. He meets her, and they begin their relationship, which is very much so born out of lust, basically. Like they're just
Yeah,
really.
they're both just escaping into each other. Like uh, being with Jesse for Tulip represents being young. Like she feels rejuvenated. She feels like she can do anything.
Yeah.
For Jesse, it's about being free because he has never really experienced life.
Right.
It's kind of I wanted to the thing. The last. I think this pretty much defines Jesse throughout. The last thing his father tells him is, "You cannot cry. You have to be tough. You
Right.
have to be a good guy because there's too many bad guys." And that doesn't really nurture a very healthy masculinity.
No.
Like it doesn't help that ah, my parent was shot in front of me, and he's telling me you cannot cry. This is the
Right.
last time I want to see you crying, because that's not how men work.
Right.
Men work like John Wayne and stuff.
And I think that that kind of toxic masculinity permeates throughout the rest of the series, where even John's or Jesse and Cassidy's relationship is just kind of based on them being dudes and being tough
Dude,
dudes and like having dude conversations and all this stuff. And a lot of the problems that happen in Jesse and Tulip's relationships are because he is A, basically unable to trust her, and B, because he is so stuck on this path of being the quote unquote good guy,
yeah,
that like nothing is gonna get in his way, like not even Tulip. Like he's just gonna do what he's gonna do, and she can either come along for the ride, or she can, I guess, just fuck off or whatever. But like, I mean,
yeah. It's
there's several instances where he just leaves her, and
no,
it's like,
and his, sorry, sorry. I was just gonna say that he's always protecting her. He's always with this very unhealthy need to be protecting her, because she's a woman
mhm,
and she cannot take care of herself, even though she's the one that saves him most of the time.
yes,
Like when they're in these situations that the word of God doesn't really work or whatever, she's the one. Like there's at one point he's gonna get shot. He doesn't even notice it, and
yeah,
she's the one that pushes him away, like constantly. She's the one that's in the role of saving him, and even without that evidence right in front of you that she's very capable of protecting herself and being okay, and that she's actually an asset, like she's something that you should consider as much as you consider Cassidy, because like the even the series makes a point of telling you that she was raised by her father, and
mhm,
he raised her like he will raise a man. Like
yeah.
she knows hunting, she knows fighting, she knows, and I just cannot deal with the fact that Jesse says he loves her, but at the end of the day, he doesn't trust her.
No.
Like even towards the end, he drugs her. He drugs her because she doesn't want to stay put.
Well, and it's a thing where you can see this kind of cyclical behavior happening where Tulip will save him, and then they'll start going back to kind of how things were before, and like Jesse shows very little gratitude. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Jesse shows very little appreciation, not only of like her fighting skills and shooting skills and all that stuff, and her saving his life, but just of the fact that like she is very, like, her love is very much so, like, she doesn't love him because he's got this power. She doesn't love him because of a lot of the other things that somebody might love him for. Like, she loves him like flaws and all. Like, she's very willing to accept a lot of the negative parts of his personality, because underneath, to her, she sees what she again describes as like, he's a good man, he's a decent man. He's somebody who I look at and like makes me want to be a better person. But that doesn't seem to be the like reciprocated with Jesse. Like, he doesn't like, oh, like I look at Tulip and like she makes me want to be a better man. It's like I look at Tulip and like I need to not let her die. That's basically what he sees when he looks at her. And even in that, like, there's been so many instances throughout comics, like on this show before we've talked about the Fantastic Four, where the thing was supposed to get married and then he didn't get married because he was like, if I get married to this woman, like I'm bringing her into this life of danger and supervillains, and like what if something happens to her and like all this stuff. And my argument for that, and my argument here for preacher, is that you could slip in the shower or get hit by a car, or like it's not like you can't die not being associated with people who are doing all these things. Like it's an unfortunate scary reality, but like shit happens and you can get in a car accident and you can like things can happen to you. So thinking like, oh, like you're so much safer if you just don't come along with me, and like I leave you in the middle of nowhere, and like you're probably better off. If that's how you really feel, then like stop coming back into this person's life. Like stop doing these things where you feel like it's okay for you to like take all of the good and like all, because again, Tulip does a majority of the emotional heavy lifting in this relationship. Like she's the one that has to endure a lot of just like the hardships, while Jesse just goes off and like does his looking for God stuff and like all that. And she's the one who has to deal with a lot of the baggage. And for her, she's a character that you know I think, like I would read like a Tulip solo series. Like if it was just Tulip like doing her own thing, I would be like, okay, like I can get with Tulip. But having her kind of put in the situation where Jesse, just he's not really good for her. Like he's not really somebody who, I think, it's not even about like appreciating as much as is like just basic respect for for another human being. Like just respecting, like again, if somebody tells you time after time, this is how I want to be treated, and you continue to just ignore that because you think you know better, like that's not a healthy relationship.
No, I have to. I really agree with you there because looking here at some notes I took are horrible. I cannot read my own handwriting. I wanted to remind people who know and teach the people who haven't read it that they're in at the start. They're in like this very immature game of they're not telling each other what happened when they broke up, when
Right.
she ran out of her. And Jesse calls it an immature game. But it's like, okay, she has a gun and she may be a hit person, a mercenary, but
Right.
you ran out on her. And like, I think she deserves an explanation because
Right.
when you did the thing that she wants to know, you were in a committed relationship that was serious. Like she told you she loved you. She told you that she wouldn't know what to do without you. Like this is not like this wasn't in the eyes of Tulip at least a fling. This wasn't this was very meaningful. And when she did the thing that he's not very happy about, the killing someone or trying to kill someone or having a
Mhm.
gun, like they weren't together. Over a year had passed, and she's in
Yeah.
this situation because of what you did, because of the way you handle stuff. Again, it had to do with the angels, and that's pretty messed up. But at least a note. Como que
Yeah.
back, like back then, at least leave a note. Hey, I've been abducted by horrible people. And
Right.
the moment you see her, just if you really love her, if you really trust her, just go ahead and say it because it's not about what happened. It's about that she doesn't feel like you're on the same page. Like you see her as an equal. Like she never feels that way,
Hmm.
and and even after all that happened, she's the one that comes forward first. She's the
Yeah.
one that takes the step to say, "Hey, this is what happened to me," and it was very tough for her to say that. But then, even after that, Jesse is not taking it seriously. It's just like, oh well, that's kind of messed up. Dot dot dot.
Well, and he's even when they first meet up, like when he's talking to Cassidy, like it's just kind of, he's talking about it in a way it's like, yeah, I'm probably gonna sleep with her soon. Like it's
Yeah,
just a matter of like when, and it's kind of like
he,
what?
he said like, I will get her into bed in 3 days, and I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah, this is the monologue. This is the monologue I want to read from
Yeah.
our protagonist. I'm gonna have her in bed in 3 days. But like, come on,
It-
like I don't know because I wanted to talk about the positive aspects of this relationship, but it's very hard because
well, yeah. I mean, I think they so on one level, I think they do there is something there. And I think with every kind of, you know, not toxic relationship, but with every relationship where, there's people who, probably are better off not together, there are certain aspects of it that I think brought them together in the first place. And so, they are both kind of, people who again, when they first met, they were kind of running away from different things, or trying to find different, ways to live. And I think finding each other and kind of living outside of the law and doing, some high risk kind of stuff together, I think brought them close together. But even later on, when they're kind of, fully settled into, this new form of their relationship, like Jesse's like, I think it's when they're in Paris, and like they just stole a car and they're like driving to go to the Grail's, headquarters. Jesse is kind of like, do you like, is this what you want to do? Like, do we just want to keep doing this? You know what I mean? Like being outlaws, and even after, all my business with God is taken care of. Like, is this how you want to live? And Tulip's kind of like, yeah, like I like this, but even that is kind of like, how long can you live like that? Like, how long is that a sustainable lifestyle? And like, is
yeah.
Jesse kind of holding her back from growing as a person, because he's kind of encouraging this, like, hey, let's just run off together and like, rob banks, and I can make people do whatever I want now. So like, you
That's
know,
kind of funny because it reminds me of what we were saying about Garth Ennis, that he needed to one up himself every issue. Like it was gonna get to a point where it's absurd with this relationship. It's like that. Like there's no
yeah,
way that you can keep the adrenaline going up and living on the high, because sooner or later there's nothing you're gonna do that's gonna give you that feeling that you're
right.
getting, because you're handling it in the worst way possible. And Jesse does tell Tulip repeatedly, you can, if you don't want to go on this quest with me, you can stay behind, you can stay here.
Yeah,
But he knows that she's not gonna stay behind because she loves him.
right.
I don't like the way that he's like manipulating her, because it's like you should ask her what she wants to do. Don't ask her like, do you want to go on this quest? No, that's misleading. That's
Right.
just ask her, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Like, consider her, listen to her. Like, if she's not comfortable with this god quest you have, then you should really consider not doing it,
Yeah.
or going on your own, because even when he feigns, oh, I'm gonna leave you behind, I'm gonna leave you a letter and you're gonna be mad at me, I'm gonna call you the next day,
Yeah.
we're gonna have a very awkward conversation, and you're going back, like you're just leaving to, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I feel like he leaves her constantly just for to make her miss him even more.
Maybe.
It's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Not kind of, it is messed up.
And even in that situation where he leaves her in Paris, and then they reunite in New York, I guess, shortly after, like it's all of it takes place in one issue where like like meets him, she like chains him to a bed, under the presumption that they're gonna like have some weird kinky sex, and then she just like leaves him chained to this hotel room bed while she goes off and like does all this other stuff. But then by the end of the issue, they're back together. Like
Yeah,
it didn't take that long for them uh
yeah.
to
No growth.
reunite.
There
And
was no
then
growth.
no, yeah, but it's in that same issue where uh Cassidy comes out and professes his love for Tulip. So now they're in a
Oh my god.
situation
Oh my
where,
god.
do you want to talk about
So
that?
is it time? Is it
Yeah.
time to talk about the big vampire in the room? Because wow.
Well, it's weird because I on another show I was curious and then talking to somebody about love triangles in comics, and just kind of wondering, like, has there ever been like a polyamorous like three-way relationship in comics? And I can't really think of one. But this was the one that was like the most toxic from the start, because Cassidy drunkenly professes his love to Tulip, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere, because it does kind of come out of nowhere, because there's never any real hint that he feels that way towards her, nor is there any real hint that she feels that way towards him at all.
No,
uh
she never felt anything for him. It was really like from the start you kind of get the feeling that he's not very comfortable with Jesse and Tulip as a couple because he saw Tulip and he was. I feel like part of Cassidy always was very attracted to Tulip,
sure.
but yeah, like I feel that at least that was there.
Right, but I mean, there's never any moments where it's like, ooh, like Cassidy's giving her like a lingering look, or like, it's kind of like, because it's played up very much so through the first half of the book, that Cassidy's always asking Jesse, like, does Tulip not like me? Like, is there's what does she like? Because there's she's always just kind of like pushing back against him, when he's kind of, she feels like he's maybe is a bad influence on Jesse, and is kind of bringing out not great aspects of his personality. And then he kind of lays all of this on poor Tulip, and now she's kind of stuck between these two dudes. And as it plays out, we start learning more about Cassidy. One, that I guess he was a domestic abuser and just beat up
Oh
this
my
woman,
god.
and has no memory of it, and has no like he sees her and he's just kind of like, what's the big deal? And she's like traumatized and messed up, and like trying to perform this voodoo ritual of like shooting at his picture over and over again. And it's also
That's
revealed that, yeah, that Cassidy like has had other friends, other people that he's called
many,
friends,
many others,
and
and
and he's always done basically the same thing, where he's either ruined their relationships or got in the middle of their relationships, and then just kind of like moved on afterwards. And it appears that Tulip and Jesse are just kind of the latest in a long line of people who he's kind of just decided that because he is ostensibly immortal, like, I can just take what I want, because
yeah,
what are they going to do about it? They're going to die someday anyways, and I'll just move on to the next couple.
no, and I can buy the idea that he will forget about some of these relationships because it's 100 years will do that to you.
Right.
But wow, man, I, I really like what one of his ex girlfriends say about him. I think it's about that deep down he's not evil, he's not bad, he's just irredeemably weak.
Right.
Like that's Cassidy's story. He's lonely, he's very weak, he doesn't know how relationships work because he's is he's he's less than human, and not just in the fact in the matter that he's a little vampire, but like those, I think those centuries really made a difference. And I
Yeah.
remember that God tells him, you deserve what's happening to you.
Yeah.
When he's been tortured, he tells him, you deserve it because you're an abomination, you're a beast, you're doing blood.
Right.
And I'm like, well, God, maybe you could have stopped some of this. So don't be talking like you had nothing to do with this. This is all part of your plan. Don't take this high and mighty. And yes, Cassidy is horrible. I don't want to defend Cassidy at all. I just because, and I think we gotta say it. He does to Tulip what he did to most of the other relationships he's had. He drugs her,
Yeah.
constantly makes her an addict, weakens her day by day until she gives in and has sex with him. Like this is sexual assault. This is rape. There's no other way of putting it. Like this is like it lasts
Yeah.
months. It lasts months, and I don't understand why they had to go that direction because for me, the most interesting aspects of this relationship is that it is a three-person relationship. Like, they
Right.
may not play up the romantic uh, part between Cassidy and Jesse, but they do present this sort of elevated friendship. Like he tries to frame the romantic and the platonic relationship in the same with the same level. Like they have the same value. Like they're just as beautiful and meaningful, and that for me it's pretty cool that he does that. And for most of the run, like you see that Cassidy cares deeply
Yeah.
for Jesse. He cares about them both. Like he puts his life in danger numerous times.
Right.
Numerous like he gives himself up to the Grail just to save Tulip and Jesse.
Mhm.
He, after getting shot by the Saint of Killers, by the way, the Saint of Killers is the best character in the whole of Preacher. Uh, parenthesis over. Just after getting shot like that, he says, "This guy that just beat me to a pulp is going after Jesse. And Jesse just called me an abomination. But he has the clarity, the serenity to understand that he said that because he was shocked, he was surprised by Cassidy eating someone. Like, even at that early stage of the relationship, Cassidy deeply cares. He
Mhm.
deeply cares about Jesse, and that's something that no one will do. Like, you see this Terminator character, Saint of Killers, like killing dozens of people, killing a vampire, and then just say, "I'm just gonna get on a pickup. I'm gonna save my body because it's coming for them. I'm
Yeah.
gonna crash it." And and that aspect, it reverberates throughout. Like it's
Yeah.
never not there. Like and I love that part. I said love again. I lied earlier, but I really love for the most on the run how they portray this friendship between these two men. That yeah, in moments it's just them being dude bros and oh
Right.
look at us we're men, but there are a lot of very small cute moments when they're like putting their emotions out there and just being sincere with each other.
Right.
It's a shame really because it doesn't happen as often with the three of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Like Jesse
Definitely.
has this weird thing where he feels very comfortable being real with other men, but never with Tulip. Like with
Mhm.
Tulip, it's just like the super macho. that needs to say cool things and speaking one-liners, and
And it's interesting too because, like you mentioned before, like Tulip is pretty much a tomboy. Like she likes to wear dresses and lingerie and all that other stuff, but she also likes to shoot guns and get into fights and do all kinds of the same thing that Cassidy likes to do. So you would think he would be able to maintain a similar kind of relationship with her, but instead, he's always trying to keep her at somewhat of a distance, even though they're a couple, an established couple that are basically planning to spend until forever, until the end of time together. They say that to each other throughout the story, but he's
yeah,
still
that's the line.
yeah, he's still not fully able to embrace and trust her, and yet here's Cassidy, who's an abomination, a vampire, this person who he definitely hasn't known to he hasn't known him as long, as he's known Tulip, and yet he kind of almost inherently trusts her or trust him, a lot more than he trusts Tulip. And it's kind of like, whoa, like why can't you give the same kind of like leeway and trust to Tulip that you're giving to Cassidy?
Okay.
Yeah, we can take a break.
Okay, okay. I didn't know. I don't need to take a break yet. I wanted to know if this is getting edited or you're just gonna, because I didn't want to say like oh, I need to take a break or
Yeah.
okay. So this is getting like cut, right?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay. I can talk freely now. Okay, well, in in about, I'm gonna say about 20 minutes. I'm gonna need like a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Is that
Uh
okay?
Yeah, that's okay. And I think we're getting close to the end, so we'll see if we're wrapping up around 20 minutes or so. Um
Okay, okay. It's gonna be like 90 minutes. It cannot be more than that.
yeah, I mean I usually keep it uh about an hour and a half. Um
Okay.
so yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
because it was bugging me. Like,
No, it's cool.
okay, okay, cool.
Um well yeah, so let's
Sorry,
kind
sorry,
of
I interrupted you.
no, no,
But
it's
yeah,
fine.
Cassidy sucks. That's
Well,
that's the samba.
let's kind of jump to what is kind of the big moment between the three of them, because Cassidy obviously lets Tulip know how he feels. Tulip is like, I don't want that at all, and continuously like rebuffs him. Then they learn more and more about Cassidy's past, and how he's you know maybe not even like not the person that he says he is, but definitely he's got a longer history than they know, and a more sordid history than they know. And then um basically uh Jesse kind of gets into a situation where he and Cassidy are you know just really getting into it with Star. Like Star is hell bent on capturing them, and the Saints of Killer is out there trying to get them as well. And they get into a situation where they're on this plane, and he's trying to save Cassidy, and basically he forces Cassidy to let him go. Cassidy's kind of holding on to him, and he drops Jesse. He uses the word to make him drop him, and then
Hmm.
uh, you know, Tulip and Cassidy could only assume that he's dead. Um, and
Yeah,
he's not. And
yeah, but he lies.
oh yeah,
Like Cassidy lies about Jesse's last words.
Oh yeah.
Like, and that's like a big plot point later on, because it just goes to show how much how, how much of this fake persona was always in play there from
Hmm.
Cassidy, which is kind of contradictory to the good parts of him. It's just I, sometimes I just don't get it. Like, I want to get it. I want to say that this was very this was very like predetermined,
Yeah.
like this, because the way I want to like justify it is like the events with the Grail really affected Cassidy more than he was aware,
Hmm.
and more than anyone really acknowledged,
Yeah.
because you got God telling him he should suffer. You got like God Almighty came down to earth
Yeah.
just to tell you that you shouldn't, that your life should be suffering, and this friend you have, you should get away from him. I
Hmm.
think that the constant torture, like I don't think that Cassidy ever felt so weak.
Yeah.
He like that is his thing. He's actually a very weak-willed person, weak-minded too, but he never confronts that. He's never
Right.
he and he doesn't have to face that because he's a vampire. He's super strong and he doesn't die.
Yeah.
But what her star did to him, it was like a very what's the phrase, wake up call.
Hmm.
Was a very harsh wake up call, and the fact that he doesn't even speak about it with Jesse afterwards. Like, what he decides to do is, I'm gonna talk about my past, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about how I got here. I'm not gonna talk about the gray spaces, the really messed up stuff. I'm just gonna talk about what's PG,
Right.
in in a sort of way, and that's so much repression like will get you to the point he got. And
Right.
I want to think that that was the point behind it all, that he got to this state because of what happened to him at this point of his life. I don't want to believe that he was just being this fake person throughout and just manipulating everything. I like to believe there was like a very heavy turn
Right.
at that point, even though he has a history of being this very evil person.
Well, yeah, and it's and again, it kind of feels like, whoa, like, even though that this is in his past, you also feel like, well, they've been through all this stuff together, and he said all this stuff to them, and you kind of feel like, there's no way that Cassidy would turn on Jesse, and there's no way that he would, try to manipulate Tulip, and yet here he is doing exactly that. um, and not only doing that, but when Jesse does finally find them, Tulip is drugged out, and she's strung out, and like she's hit a new low. And Cassidy is enabling it. Like, it's not like a situation where he's like, whoa, like, I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna take care of you, I'm gonna, like, it's like, no, like, I'm gonna, put you in the situation where you're extremely vulnerable, and
Yeah,
I
in
can
a
I can
very Jesse, she's helpless. Like, she was depressed because Jesse died, and obviously she loved him. Like, and if this was really a healthy relationship, a good friendship, he would he would have stopped pushing. He would have stopped trying. He would have just been there for her
Mhm.
because that's what she needed. She needed someone to just be there, because
Right.
it wasn't an easy situation for any kind of person.
No.
Like, wow.
Yeah. So after this, there is a huge fallout between everybody. You
A new
basically,
was that a nuclear fallout? that word.
There was that, but there was also, like Tulip kind of comes to her senses and she leaves Cassidy. And then Jesse and Cassidy kind of are put on this collusion course, leading to the end of the series, where Jesse realizes that he has to die in order to release Genesis, and kind of have his final confrontation with God, but he also has to finish his business with Cassidy. So, there's a whole standoff between everybody, um, and basically, Star ends up killing Jesse, and then Tulip ends up killing Star, and then Cassidy commits suicide.
Yeah, but
But
they're all saved because
right,
of a literal Deus Ex Machina.
yeah, no,
Like,
Cassidy had made a deal with God, that God would resurrect Jesse. God also resurrects Cassidy. And it kind of ends with everybody back together. Cassidy is not with them. He's somewhere else. And
but
he's not a
but he's
vampire anymore.
yeah. That's I don't know why he, why he wasn't a vampire anymore. I guess that's the whole thematic conclusion. Like, well, Jesse wants you to be a man now.
Right.
He wants you to uh, own up to all the things you've done. So
Yeah.
you have to be human now. And
Right.
this, and I don't know. Like, I know that Jesse packs a hard punch, but is it enough to make you like make a turn and say I'm gonna be a good person now?
I guess.
Like, like I, I just like what I don't like about that part of the ending. It just seems very simplistic to basically a 66 part story about these three characters.
Hmm.
Then it's just like, well, I got in a fist fight, God resurrected me, and I pledged to be a good person. Like, man, you've been setting up very epic proportion kind stuff, and to a point, you've you've kind of like delivered, but then you give this even sort of sugar coated ending, like
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of
no one paid really, like at the end at least.
right, and it's kind of hard to know how to feel about the three of them, in the aftermath of everything that happens, because it's not even that there's not any consequences. I mean, they all had to die, basically at
Is it
different
real?
parts of the story, you
Is he
know.
really dying if he
Yeah.
gets resurrected five
Well,
minutes later?
well, and that's the thing. So, they make the sacrifice, and then they're all back at the end, and it's kind of like everything is great for everybody, in certain senses. Uh but you kind of wonder, like, are things going to be different for Jesse and Tulip now, like after going through this whole ordeal? Like, is he finally gonna trust her? Is he finally going to, are they gonna get married? Are they gonna settle down? Are they gonna do any of this stuff? Or is it just gonna be, immediately them going right back to what they had been doing before, really now? Because again, like, dying and then being immediately resurrected, like, does that give you the kind of, like,
Enlightenment.
drive that you need to be like, oh man, I need to really cherish life and like all of my
Oh,
relationships
yeah,
and everything.
you're enlightened now. Like,
Yeah.
you went to the door. Like, I'm guessing that the series does want to say that now they're gonna have healthy relationships because, and they make a big deal of this.
Yeah.
Jesse cries for the first time
Right.
since his father died, and Tulip sees this and it's like, oh wow, he really means it now. And now he means it because he's crying. and he doesn't cry.
Right.
Like,
Well,
whoa, healthy masculinity. Like, again, it's a very nice touch to bring it full circle. The thing about him letting himself feel, but like, I just see it, and I know they died. I know it
right.
was very messed up, but I don't I don't know if these characters deserve the ending they had. It's my problem with it,
Hmm.
and that message can be misleading because the first time Jesse left her behind to go to Paris, uh, it was like, I'm just gonna leave in the middle of the night.
Right.
The second time, I'm pretty sure he drugged her.
Yeah.
Like, you drugged someone that that's been for the last few months tortured with drugs, and she was made an addict to these different drugs and alcohol, and she was depressed. Like, she stopped being even conscious. Like, she
Hmm.
wasn't even aware of who she was during that period. And you decide that the best way to handle this is, I'm gonna drug you, and so you cannot move, and you stay here while I go out there and punch someone.
Right.
Like, come on, like, I really don't believe these characters deserve happiness.
Well,
Except Tulip. Tulip deserves
right.
everything.
Philip deserves
But
happiness, but also, like, again, like at the end of the day, um, you know, having them just kind of like learn a lesson through death or whatever, like it doesn't, like, I think it may have had more impact if they were shown in the afterlife, either heaven or hell together, and like that's their new beginning or start. It's just kind of like where we died and we found each other, in the afterlife, rather than like, hey, we're back to business as usual, without really much consequence. And like, I think there's something to be said, I guess, obviously, if you want to take it as a, these people have been through so much, they've been through so much trauma, and because of, the all the stuff that they went through, like maybe they deserve, some happiness, maybe they've earned some happiness. But at the same time, it's like, there's earning happiness, and then there's like, you know working to maintain that happiness. And like they have not shown themselves to be people who like are gonna put in the kind of effort that it takes to like keep a good thing going. Like they could have the good thing, but like, do you think Jesse is able to, maintain the change that he's seemingly made? Or is he just gonna like a few months from now turn around and just be like, I got some man stuff to do, and can you stay
and
home while I go do that?
the classic, no, it's not that I don't trust you. It's
Right.
just that
I don't
I
want you to get
gotta,
hurt.
I, I cannot take the idea of my mind that you will get hurt. It
Yeah.
drives me crazy. Like, come on, man, just say it. Just say you don't trust her.
Right.
Just, I don't. Yeah, it's
Well,
pretty uncomfortable.
there's a lot more that we could talk about, but I did want to get to some of the projects that you're working on, that do involve romance. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, of course. But are you sure you don't want to talk about the Saint of Killers?
Well,
Because
the Saint of Killers, I think there is a lot to talk about. I mean, just in terms of his relationships, like we get a glimpse in the one shot into his, family and
Mhm,
marriage
mhm.
and all of that stuff, which is, but again, it's another example of, like, let's kill all the women in this man's life, And
Yeah,
then
the classic fridging. She was just, let's fridge everyone and turn this into the ultimate killing machine.
right. So it's
Yeah,
kind
but
of like you
yeah,
feel bad for him, but you're also just like, all right, like I guess sure.
okay, but at the same time, the fact that they threw a little nuke on him,
Right.
it hit him in the head. Nothing happened to him, and he was like, not enough gun. Like
Yeah. No,
that's
again like a Tulip Sand Killer spinoff comic. Perfect. Like I would read that forever.
yeah, yeah, that's the kind of the kind of comics I need in my life. Well, now getting more serious, it's yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but I have worked with Liana Falcon,
hmm
the Cosmic Fish, Cosmography. Uh, we worked Body. There's not a lot of romance in there, but there is a dog, so I'm sure you you know
yeah.
how that feels. Uh, but we're also working on this sort of maybe graphic novel. It's very romance heavy, like in the sense that my idea was this sort of uh, fantasy, sort of sci-fi romance epic. Like there are elements in the story that do dwell in these otherworldly things, like time travel, for instance. But it's mainly the story about this character mm, trying to get over a relationship that was very meaningful, and that one relationship ultimately defines this person throughout the story. And the way that I make this story something else, something like worth reading, it's that it's a very, I think it's a very cool concept
hmm
about this person that basically gets his life resetted to an exact point every time he remembers his past relationship.
hmm
Right? There is this one relationship that ended very badly, but this person has repressed everything about that, and is just trying to live his life without remembering that, because his life has resetted so many times that he's kind of protecting himself and trying to move forward.
hmm
But every time he gets quote unquote triggered, he's back to the start. He's back to the point where he had this accident that made him lose his memories. So it's kind of a very long story because there's a lot of uh, different paths he takes. Like even the slightest change in what he does affects the whole narrative and what happens to him and the consequences. And one path is grooming this person that is owning up and growing from that relationship, and the other is just repressing.
hmm
So obviously, like what I want to deal is how these traumas can alter not just how we think or act, like how they affect the world around us, and I want to actually explore all the different possibilities, all with this sort of epic backdrop that could be apocalyptic in some sense. Like there are some pathways that lead to the extinction of the planet as we know it.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it there is that sense of butterfly effect narrative
Yeah.
that everything could change. You could either help everyone, or you can bring everything to its end.
Well, and I think that's definitely something that I know a lot of people can relate to, even just thinking back on past relationships that they've had, and specific moments, and just thinking, man, what if I did? something else. Like what would
Yeah.
have happened if I had not said that thing or done that thing or, done something different instead, and like, would that relationship have continued, or would have things, gotten to the point that they've gotten to? So, going all the way to the extinction of the human race like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's got to do with plants.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you read Swamp Thing by Scott Snyder.
Hmm.
I really love his work in there, and I've always been like sort of interested in plants. Uh, but, 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 I'm forgetting the word.
Botany.
Botany, yeah. I was gonna say botanic, but I was like, that doesn't sound real. But yeah, like botany. But that the perspective that Snyder gave to the realm of plants, the realm of the green, really like sparked something in me about how lethal, how powerful the plants are. Like at
Hmm.
any moment, like they can just take over. So so I took that idea and I made this character who deals with is like this great botanist, and he deals with two different set of plants. That one deals with memories, the other deals with poison. Uh, there's you know that there's photosynthesis, but before photosynthesis there was actually like chemiosynthesis. Like
Hmm.
they created instead of generating oxygen, these plants generate sulfur and things that are poisonous for us.
Hmm.
So I'm dealing with that. Like I'm dealing with these two sets of plants. So yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up on everything. But is there anything about Preacher that you want to let people know about before we go, or is there anything about your upcoming project that you want to tell people about? Uh,
Well, about Preacher, if you're watching the series and enjoy it, don't read them. Don't read the comic. The TV show really goes out of its way to enhancing the source material.
Hmm.
I really I haven't seen season two, but because I suck. But but season one was very enjoyable. Obviously has the black humor in it. It's very
Hmm.
edgy, but it's not over the edge. It's not like that
Right.
offensive. It's pretty good. But if you enjoy it, keep watching it. Forget about the comic.
Okay.
You're gonna get disappointed. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a lot to invest in, and it's different enough that if you read the first trade or two and you're not into it, then I would say it's not nothing's going to change. So,
Hmm.
uh, well, let's let everybody know where they can follow you on social media. So if they're definitely looking forward to projects that you're putting out, or they want to read other comics that you've made,
Yeah,
where they can find all that stuff at.
I was gonna say about upcoming projects, especially the one we talked about. Eliana is gonna either do the line art or the colors. So you guys
Cool.
out there know it's gonna be beautiful,
It is.
because if you read Cosmic Fish, or did you write Sato?
Yeah.
Well, or Sato, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure because I knew it could be you, but anyway, that then you know that her art is just
It's
wow,
amazing. Yeah.
it's great. So follow her before following me. Follow her. I think she's what's her Twitter handle? Is it Cosmoquences or
Yeah.
Cosmography
It's
with
Cosmoquences.
Cosmoquences? Go follow at Cosmoquences, and if you wanna see my random tweets, Uh, Sometimes every blue moon I post a story over there or a comic preview. I'm at not Damka. That's Damka.
All right.
There you can find me. I'm also on Instagram. It's the same handle, not Damka. So
Awesome.
yeah, there you go.
Well, I like to thank Giuliano again for being on and talking with us and digging into Preacher with me. I know, it's again, it's one of those things that it's fascinating to kind of dig into different aspects of it. Even if you're kind of like, man, I don't know how much I enjoy any of this, but it's yeah, it's a seminal comic work that I think people are gonna always keep coming back to. But looking at it through not only just the lens of relationships, but also just from with some hindsight. It's yeah, there's a lot. I encourage people who have Preacher, whether it's the single issues or the trades, to just go back and read through it and just kind of examine how it makes you feel, because it may have changed. You might remember enjoying it a lot, but some of the things you might get into might be like, man, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and it's perfectly fine to backtrack and say you don't like this anymore because we grow.
We
Like
sure.
people grow. Don't be ashamed of it. Like
Yeah.
I I I I remember saying like when I read Preacher that even though I was sort of uncomfortable, that I loved it. It was great that everyone should read it, but it doesn't. We've had a whole podcast about basically bashing Preacher. So as you can see, this happens. This happens
Yeah.
a lot. Like especially with stuff from the 90s.
Right.
uh,
It's possible to at once appreciate aspects of something while being open and honest about criticism of it. Because if we just say, oh, I really like this creator, I really like this character, and so I don't want to say anything bad about it because I enjoy everything else that they've done except for this thing. You're not being honest about how things are making you feel, and you should definitely feel uh that you're able to say, while I like certain aspects of Preacher and I appreciate certain aspects of Preacher, there's a good amount of it that I can't abide by. I can't say that it's not only good comics, but like it's putting out good stuff into the world. Like there's nothing wrong with being provocative if there's a message or a point behind it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's just for the sake of making people upset, and like that's not enough. Like there's got to be more to it than just, oh, like this is going to make somebody feel bad.
yeah, no, I don't think that with Garth Ennis this is the case, but if you're doing this just to protect these artists that you love, you're not doing them any good.
Mm-mm.
Like they need to hear what their what their faults are, what they're failing at here and there in order to become better. So that for me, that's not reason enough. That's not really a good excuse because it's okay not to like someone that you're a fan of, be, and you need to be like sincere with yourself because even if you're not an artist or a writer or whatever, like it's not healthy to feed to give energy to these people that have some issues and are doing things in, I don't want to say the wrong way, but it's definitely not the right way. It's
Right.
not like
Well, there's
yeah,
better ways to do the same thing that do less
exactly,
harm.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Giuliano, thanks again for coming on. This was great. Definitely enjoyed talking about Preacher. And definitely want to have you back on again to talk about something maybe that you're more passionate about, or at least more.
More okay with.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, I
Um,
can't wait to be back. You just call me up and I'm here.
all right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Definitely gonna catch you next time. Be on the lookout for more Stark After Dark. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys.